These are the answers to the top questions on the Ask Engineers Reddit thread. I've got a bunch of content ready for you, and I've got all your questions here lined up, and I'll answer where I've been, and also the 10+1 Steps to Problem Solving book. Here we go.
This is the Engineering IRL podcast, a place for engineers in the real world. We try to break down engineering concepts and figure out how to apply them to real life. Let's become better problem solvers, better engineers. This is your host, Andrew Sario. Let's begin.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Engineering IRL show for engineeringinreallife.com. I am your host, Andrew Sario, and it's been a little while, hasn't it? I think the last episode that I released was Revision 38, Engineering Helicopter Safety Systems, Reducing the Risk of a Helicopter Crash. And it was a pretty good episode, as well as the couple before that. I think we had Mission to Mars and Systems Engineers Solve Complex Problems. But today's episode is a special one in that I'm going to do a classic approach to the format, just driven by key questions. So I've lined up some questions on Ask Engineers that was on there on that Reddit thread, and we'll see if we can answer them raw. Where have I been? So I guess since the lockdowns, where I've been is essentially my primary job picked up. It got busier because I work in critical infrastructure, and so that doesn't slow down, right? And because we're working remotely, I actually got a lot more work done. Things became more productive. My work from home setup is pretty damn good, and a lot of my work was in design phases. So the work I was doing was better off at home anyways. So that was actually one of the drivers. It got a lot more busier and adjusting to the whole lifestyle. How's work? It's been good, yeah. Quite busy, like I mentioned. Getting a lot of design work, and the good thing is, if you notice, the podcast release schedule kind of goes in bursts. We get a burst of episodes, and then it kind of lulls down, and then we get another burst of episodes. But what happens is when I do more engineering work, then that gives me more context and things to talk about in the podcast. Is the episode format changed? For the very least, this episode has changed just for this purpose, but the overall setting is mostly the same. I just wanted to go and return to this format. Why am I going with this style? Well, that's because the high production time spent on the previous few episodes takes a fair amount of time. The production schedule has a lot more time dedicated to it, and because I'm doing a few other things with Engineering IRL right now, which I'll get to in a moment, I needed to dedicate some time to that. So actually I've been in the background developing a lot of stuff, as well as work stuff picking up. Engineering IRL has been picking up behind the scenes. So if you haven't had a look yet, go to engineeringinreallife.com and have a look at the site. The entire site's actually revamped. The tagline we're going with is Real Skills for a Successful Life in Engineering. For more articles there, we have a shop. There's merchandise. We've got these mugs. If you follow our socials, you'll see that we've got this classic engineering meme where you've got the engineer as a function, problems and coffee are the inputs, and normally you have solutions as the output with this side effect of sarcasm, but our version has sarcasm as the default output. Solutions are actually the side effect, and I think that's closer to reality. Anyway, so that's on a cool mug, shirts and jumpers and all that sort of stuff. And then I set up a free membership, so you get access to additional resources if you sign up for free membership on the website. And the good thing is, and this is probably the biggest piece taking my time at the moment, is you will get full access to my new book. The new book is 10+1 Steps to Problem Solving, an engineer's guide based on a career in operational technology and control systems. So essentially I have a 10+1 steps to problem solving that I've actually used in my career. And with that, what I did was I took those steps, and you would have remembered back to episode 2, I had one that was kind of a raw version of that. It's been formalized over the years, and essentially I wrote an article, and then I was like, actually there's a lot of content here. So what I did was I collated them all into a more formalized structure, which is the book. And the cool thing is in the book you get a lot of stories from my actual career where I used some of these techniques just to give you different perspectives. And then you can think of it as a tool that you use to know how to boost your career. So think about your problem solving skills. That's one of the key things you do as an engineer. So how can you leverage that skill, that core skill, to get you better jobs, assigned to bigger projects and justify promotions and things like that. So why interweave all of this career stuff right into the book within the steps? And it's all contextual and all that stuff. So I think it's really cool. And anyone who listens to the show will actually get benefit from it, because a lot of them have those underlying philosophies that we talk about in the show, where we apply some of the engineering stuff that we know to real life, which is cool. What are the 10 steps? So the 10 steps have got kind of interesting titles that hopefully hook you in a little bit more, but it might be enough to kind of give you an idea. So the first step is the question. Second is the obvious. Third is eyes. Fourth is check yourself. Fifth is Dr. G. Sixth is the RTFM protocol. 7 is strip. 8 is what about the environment. 9 is phone a friend. And 10 is pray. The 11th step, which is 10 plus 1, the plus 1 step, is kind of a secret step. It's what I use to get myself out of any other situation. But it kind of only makes sense in the context of the other steps. So actually, majority of the problems, like 90%, you really solve in those first 10 steps. And probably 80% of your problems you solve in the first 3 to 4. So that's kind of the power of it. I think actually, here's one thing you can do. You can go to the website, engineeringinreallife.com/book. Even if you go to the homepage, you'll find the link. Once you sign up, you get online access. And then what you can do is you log in, you go to your 10 plus 1 online access in the shortcut bar at the top. And then you'll get what's early stage version of the chapters. I think I've got chapters 1, 2, and 9 up there. So you can already read through it and get an idea of what's in there if the book's not already released. So that's something that you should do today, and make sure you lock in that access. I'm going to be labeling who are the OG engineering IRL people. So once you sign up, you'll get a special badge, and I'll know who are the people that started with me before I released it. And we'll think of something. There'll be a prize or some game or something to earn, essentially. So what's the update on 10 plus 1 writing status? So at about 140,000 words or something, the book's at under 180 odd pages, and we're in the internal editing phase, which means I'm going back through all the chapters. So I've got the story down, I've got all the primary text down, but I'm going through, and if there's any gaps or continuity that's missing, I'm filling that in, and then I'm also keep refining the words that are there. I learned a pretty cool technique off Jordan Peterson, which is what you want to do is you want to get your words on the page. So the reason why you get stuck writing things sometimes is your brain does two things. It wants to write and it wants to edit. And the editing brain is actually slowing you down, because instead of getting raw thoughts out of your head, you don't put it to paper because you're editing already, like it's not right. That doesn't make sense. You're trying to make sense of it. But what you should do is just get the bad, incoherent text from the brain onto the page first. And as a separate process, go back and edit. You'll get a lot more words out. And that's how I managed to write, a lot in about a month's span. Just get the words out and then separately do your editing process, and it's a lot better because you've got something to work with. You avoid this like writer's block. I think even if you do like online applications, sometimes they come up with like these 5 questions and you're like stuck trying to answer the question. You can't even type your answer. But if you just get the ugliest, like the straight thoughts that come in, even if they don't make sense, don't think about the English, just put words on a page. That's the trick. Anyway, so that's in there. I've got the internal editing. Once I get through that internal editing, I'll submit it to some external editors. There's a few avenues I'm going through, and at the same time I'll be releasing snippets and pieces and see which one gets kind of some sort of reaction, and focus it down that way. So I guess hopefully my plan is to do or be close to at least a launch in September. That's the plan. It's a bit ambitious, but it's doable. Also, there's been about 100 sign-ups so far for the early access to the book, so get in, be one of those people, be one of the OGs, and help us build this community. It's a good way for me to know that the book will have some sort of audience when it does release, but I already know it does with the engineering IRL people. So alright, let's get to it. So top Ask Engineers questions of the week. This was last week's questions, but let's see. I'm an undergrad for electrical engineering, but I feel like I know absolutely nothing. How did you feel when you graduated? Did everything work out? For sure, I knew absolutely nothing for myself. So I was probably in a worse position in the sense that I wasn't an electrical engineer and I joined an electrical company. So basically 95% of all the other engineers were electrical engineers. And I remember early days, there was a meeting and the manager just like popped some joke, and it was in the vein of, well, you know what happens when the frequency increases, and everyone laughed, and I didn't know why, so I laughed. Of course, I did this awkward laugh, like, please don't ask me why I'm laughing, because I didn't know the underlying. I couldn't get the joke, right? But it turned out fine. Like most of my story, it turned out fine. I think that what you learn on the job, it just far outweighs what you learn in the classroom. The classroom gives you a lot of the underlying principles, so you need some of these underlying principles, but B, you need to be able to have the capability to understand those principles. I think that's the more important part when you're going through your college or university. You're basically learning how you learn. You're learning how to write, approach people, be professional, all that sort of stuff, and they count. But most employers are getting new grads not because of their skill. Right? They're seeing if they can work with the team. They're seeing if they're coachable and can learn some of this stuff, and have some sort of track record of achieving things. That's pretty much it. They don't expect you to be able to do what they do on their job. Otherwise, they'd have to pay you a lot more money. A good reason for leaving a company. Explaining in an interview why you left your old job. Right. So if you're in an interview and they ask, so why are you leaving the old job? I think straight up honesty is the best as a general principle, except, right? I say except. The other priority is you don't want to be bad mouthing the other company. Like, you don't want to, air out your dirty laundry in public. Like, you gain nothing from that, and it also, you're talking negatively. I think a lot of people talk about the reputation and how they might think you would apply that to the new job and all that stuff, but I think really you're just taking quite a negative swing to the conversation by doing so. So what are the reasonable answers? There's some generic ones, but you might feel like you're lying. But I think really the company goals and your role within that did not match, what you were going for, your own goals. I think that is a truth. So you can expand on it or not, but you don't need to. You can just say, look, there was no specific thing that occurred, because it probably was a combination of things, right? I mean, it might just straight up be more money. I know I heard this company earns more money, so I got sick of the money. Look, that's, again, your goals not aligning, right, with what the company's got for you, position-wise. So that's a legit reason. For me, when I changed jobs, it was about the assets that I was working on. So in the power industry, you have to go where the power is, and those are in remote sites. And I made it about travel, which meant it's impossible to do my job without travel because that's where the assets were. So I wanted to move to a company where the assets were local. So even if I had to go to site, I was local. And that was a legit reason. When doing task time estimation, do you multiply your result by pi? So do I multiply my result by 3? I've heard this is pretty good advice. I think I'm a culprit of estimating too efficiently. Sometimes the expectation is this will take 2 weeks, and you're like, I could do that in a day. And maybe you can, but you have to. What you didn't do is cater for all these other bits and pieces. So it's actually not too bad advice. Most times it feels weird if you think that a task might take you 1 week, and so you tell them 2 weeks, and they had an expectation of 3 days, and the project manager's looking at you like, 2 weeks, what? Right? So even if it does take you a week or 3 days, like, you initially set that expectation to 2 weeks. It's not a bad piece of advice, to be honest, but I think 3 is a little bit high, on the high end, but it's actually not too bad. Can I rescind my 2 weeks notice? Oh, that's a toughie. I actually don't know. Like, you can, right? There's no legal precedent to say that you can't, but I don't think it looks too good. I think for most people, if you're planning to put in your 2 weeks notice and it's a 2 week notice, you're not even giving a month notice, like, more than that a lot of times. So you're doing your minimum. They will put minimum effort to you rescinding, and then your intentions are out there. It might be obvious. I think the entire situation and the context of the situation may change. It depends on the nature at which you submitted it. But to answer the question directly, you can. How is another question. But I would say as much honesty as you can fill it with, right? Because you want to be sincere. You don't want to be playing games here, and you don't want to be rude, but you also need to understand that they know now, right? Even if they knew, like you're on the way out, or they've always known, or it's all out in the air, that kind of makes it official. And you trying to take it back you're not in a position of leverage at all, right? So they don't have to honor you, right? They can take that notice, and that's the notice. Should I grad next year or avoid COVID affected economy and go for an internship year and a master's? For me, I think a couple things. One is you really need to understand your goal. Like, if you just want to get out there and get experience, I think you grad and you try to get a job in the COVID-affected economy because you're already not dependent on that money, right? And if you can establish yourself in this economy, that means every other economy you're going to be great, right? So if your goal is really to get out and actually start doing some engineering, I think that's probably the best way. I think the safe route, you're saying go for an internship year and a master's. I think if you've always imagined I'm going to be a master in X, right? You know you're going for your master's. I don't think the internship year is a bad idea because you want to get that experience in and you can start your studies at the same time. One thing to consider is if you do grad and become an engineer, you might get an idea of what master's you actually want to do, and you might even get into a company where they might support you to get that master's. So instead of you feeling like you're just straight up extending your study and paying more money, you might feel like you're getting paid to get your master's, right? And you're also more focused on what it is that you're trying to do. You have a path. Like, if I get this master's, it's going to cost me this much, but I can see this career path which will equal this much money. You can almost value it. It's definitely one perspective to go on, but I think you need to get clear on what you're actually trying to achieve. And I don't think that avoiding the COVID economy should be your primary driver. I think it's a consideration, but it's not your primary driver because there's always going to be something, right? So yeah, anyway, just good luck on that one. What are the major differences between entry-level engineer versus senior engineer job in terms of roles and responsibilities? I would say it's a lot. I think underlying principles in terms of the work, you might feel like, hey, I'm still doing the same work they're doing. Yes, but when you don't own the responsibility, it's completely different, right? You own some responsibility for your portion of work, but your portion forms a bigger part of the work that the senior engineers have responsibility for, that they have to answer for to higher ups. And it's not good enough for them. Even if you are working under them, you do a job for them, and you solely messed up, you're literally the root cause of the problem. They still have to be the one to answer for it. They can blame you and stuff, but they still wear the responsibility. And a lot of the time, their job is to get that job done, right? So they don't care about the blame or attribution and things like that, except for the problem-solving reasons. But that's probably one of the big differences. They actually do a lot of work for you, so they don't just look at what you're doing, sign it off, you do all the work, and they get the credit. It doesn't work that way. They actually should be checking it, and maybe they are acting like that, right? And they get all the credit, but that's fine. You don't wear the problem at the end of the day. Their name's the one that checked it. So whatever's your fault is still their fault. And that's going to be the biggest difference. I think on a technical front, they're not expecting too much from you. They're going to portion out work that requires little explanation as they think they can, or they're going to offload the tedious work. You're going to be stuck more doing in the trenches type work in terms of your role and responsibilities. So you're more focused on providing the best piece of work that you can provide without worrying about the big picture. And they're a little bit more worried about the big picture aligning with the project manager's goals and the overall stakeholders of the business. Alright, cool. So wrapping up, look, let me know if you have any specific topics in mind. I've got a lot of feedback over the months about what people would like to hear, so I'll get to that list and start approaching them. Don't forget to check out the revamped website and to sign up for the free online book access. Okay, it's engineeringinreallife.com/book. I'm also planning to collect names for the people who sign up in the pre-release, like I said, and include their names in the hard copy of the book. Look, if you want to be a part of that, you have to email me, and that'll be a specific thing that I work on. If you're not subscribed to the podcast, this is the time. Seriously, if you've got to this episode, you got this far, just hit subscribe, okay? It's not going to impact you or hurt you, but you might get some good value, okay? And I think the biggest thing is to share it and help get more engineering content out there. If you think there is a lack of engineering content out there, even if the existing ones aren't the greatest quality, if you like it, basically that creates the demand, that brings more people, that drives the need, and then therefore you get more content. So that is actually the best way to do that. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this episode, a little bit more raw and straight up thoughts, similar to what we did in the original episodes. I think we'll have a lot more content coming once I start getting closer to the finish of the book, because writing for that is taking a lot of time, but it's also a lot of fun. If you want to see snippets and things like that, just follow all the social pages. I'm posting a lot of stuff every day to give you an idea. And the biggest thing is just thanks for being part of the engineering IRL community. I get all the stats and I see all the listens, and it's a pretty cool achievement to have hit 11,000 downloads. I think that's a pretty cool achievement, and hopefully we'll get a few more than that. And that's it. I'll probably take on some interviews soon and we'll go from there. Anyway, that being said, thanks.